And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have one of my good brothers here in the temple, the man behind Sprinting Owl Designs, currently dealing with way too many horses, and previously here for things like Deadbeats and Overwar: The Night Comes Down. The one and only Richard Kelly. How you doing today, man?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Thank you for coming on and braving time zone hell in the process.
Yep. It's not too bad. Nice and dark out right now here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're only a few weeks in and already I missed the winter. But I'm pretty sure there was already one surprise bit of snowfall in April, because as Prince sang, sometimes it snows in April.
Yep.
But for this one, we have the return of a experiment that I've been doing to see how flexible Legend Edition can be, and that involves cross-adaptation. In this case, with Daggerheart, and I obviously brought you along since you have developed your own third-party expansions for Daggerheart, some pretty extensive ones as well.
Yes. Although that process was accidental. I wanted to see if I could write a class, and then the class spiraled into 6 classes, and the 6 classes spiraled into 200 pages of new material. None of that was an intentional process, it just kind of happened.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't tap the sign on the back that says, "We don't do this because it's easy, we do this because we thought it was easy."
True. Extremely true.
But that being said, I know that in preparation for this, you did take a bit of a dive into Legend Edition, and before we get into the trickiness when it comes to adaptation, which we did talk about before it went live, what has been your take on what took Zan and I about 5 years to make?
So my impression of Legend Edition is that it is impressive. Just in terms of mechanical density, in terms of layout, in terms of not just the size of the core book, but the scope of the overall project, given that it's not just the core book, it's a lot of other books of equivalent visual fidelity. This is a book that takes a lot of information and organizes it very, very effortlessly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought this was cool to read through.
Mm-hmm. One of the early goals was to have a. It wasn't to make the ultimate FF tabletop. That was never the goal, but rather have something that could be just as doable in more futuristic settings, as in the same way as more high fantasy settings and things in between. Which is why Mythos not setting is one of the pillars that's in the first few pages.
Yep.
And that's also why I cited things like Fantasycraft in the opening. Because for the longest time, Fantasycraft was my go-to if I was running D20 games. And it was because of how flexible it was. Or it wasn't really built with one particular style of fantasy in mind and then trying to go off half-cocked about whether or not you could hack it into other styles of fantasy. No, it was built from a neutral perspective.
Yeah, and that can be a tricky line to walk when you're creating something that's meant to be more of a unisystem.
Hmm.
The broader you make it, the less specifically it's going to resonate with any specific thing you're trying to do, and the more specific you make it, the more likely you are to rule out a way that people might try to use it.
Hmm. And obviously, things like Legend System were heavy inspirations, as well as a few others that I listed in that segment. But one of the one of the big one of the big things was, instead of, because a problem that I've had with a lot of games that try to emulate Final Fantasy and similar um, console RPGs is a skewing towards the SNES era without actually saying that it's going to be doing that. Uh,
Yeah, I can see that. Um, I I would say that there's maybe more similarity in the SNES and pre-SNES Final Fantasies than there is post-SNES era. Like the gulfs between individual games, both sort of stylistically and mechanically, get wider.
and it was there are already pretty large leaps once you get into the SNES era in terms of how things play, because experimentation has always been the core of FF. And
Yes.
through my retrospective look at adapting the individual games, I keep giving as many flowers as I can to Hiroyuki Ito. Uh, he was the creator of the battle system in the original FF, then the job system in 3, and the active time battle system in 4, as well as a lot of scenario writing and combat or advancement systems throughout the series. Uh, but he's kind of an unsung hero, because even with those contributions, often a lot of the credit that should be given to him ends up being given to Nomura or Sakaguchi or Nojima.
Yeah, I can see that.
Uh, what it what's funny about the ATB part is he cited Formula One as his major influence, and had said that viewed he viewed it that RPGs would lean more and more towards action with time and better tech, and ATB was his way of moving that process along. Uh, and that was his mindset back in '91.
Yep. He was also the designer who compared Final Fantasy Battle System to American football, right?
What had happened was, when he was assigned the Final Fantasy project, he had never played an RPG at all, tabletop or video game, and his idea to line up characters in the way that you see in the original FF is where the football reference comes in. Like, you stack that
Okay.
up with how formations on offense and defense work um, in any sort of football. Although, given the gap between them, I'd say it leans more into Canadian football than American. But
Gotcha.
that's me getting into pedantics. Um, because there are it's not obvious from the outset, but there are significant differences between the way football is played in Canada versus the US. And I did dip into that when I was explaining why I made the decision not to use grid combat. And I paralleled it with how dungeon design has shifted over the years, going from very tightly confined ones where marching order is the big deal to more set piece like designs, but still having
Yeah.
the same movement mechanics.
Yeah, and I think some of that may be like technical limitations being decreased. Like, if you have to worry about every pixel that you're placing, you
Well,
can't place a lot of pixels.
I'm talking in tabletop sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I did a whole thing comparing the way formations work in the NFL versus the CFL and the types of plays that they foster, and paralleled that with the more confined dungeons of the early years of role playing versus the more set piece like ones you see nowadays.
Yeah.
Because NFL favors tight defensive focused formations. The CFL has a bit of space between offense and defense, and favors defenses that are more formations that are more spread out. The ones that very much favor gunslingers or air raid setups, not too far removed from the types of formations you'd see in college.
Okay.
Uh, which and I thought if this is going to be agnostic, then picking one particular approach to grid combat is skewing it towards one direction. When the idea was always to allow it to emulate whatever type of fantasy the table wants it to.
Yeah.
Uh, and because of and also there's more games in Final Fantasy that use a row based system or don't even use grid combat at all. Uh, like the main one that comes to mind when it comes to grid combat is obviously going to be tactics, but not every game in the series is tactics. This isn't like Fire Emblem where that's the default.
Yep.
Like if I was writing a Fire Emblem game, I think it would be expected of me to have grid combat as well as have the weapon triangle in some form.
Yeah. I mean, it would be interesting to design a Fire Emblem without the grid, but that's that's my somewhat contrarian design instincts rearing up. I will think about that idea later.
Yeah, without the grid, there's ways that it could be done. I mean, the Might and Magic RPG that's in the works isn't using a grid at all.
Might and Magic tabletop?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It is using a more narrative approach, which is probably a smart move because it wants to allow for both adventuring as an individual character as well as the more large scale stuff. And trying to assign that to a grid would mean having to have a combat grid that works in two different ways.
Yes.
And
not to mention there's the processing problem of if you have a lot of individual units on a side, either action resolution has to be very simple or turns take a while.
and it's one this is why I'm not going to make too much of a fuss about not being able to adapt 1-to-1 between Legend Edition and Daggerheart or vice versa. Because whenever it comes to adaptation, you always have to deal with the fact that when you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do. And with some things, it's just not going to transfer all that easily.
Okay, so you're all right with this being potentially a more vibesy adaptation, because, like, my view of Daggerheart is that it is a game with vibes at the center of it.
Mm-hmm. And it very much is that. When I when I did my Valley of the Judge episode, I did make that clear that for people who prefer a more cinematic style of play, this is going to be a more natural than people who prefer a more grounded approach.
Yeah.
And I will note, when I think of cinematic in that regard, I'm thinking along the lines of, say, Wushu by Daniel Bain or Feng Shui.
Yep. Yeah, Yeah, games that give you a lot of space to kind of narrate what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I'd also said anybody who wants to do a fantasy version of the tea house scene in Hard Boiled will be right at home in Daggerheart. I was
Yep.
half joking, but there is there is something to it.
Yeah, I think Daggerheart like specifically shines when you have a scene that can kind of in freeform fashion go off the rails and
Mm-hmm.
then manage to get itself back onto the rails by the end.
Yeah. Oh. And I think obviously for some that's going to be a bit of a bit of a deal breaker, but I've never subscribed to this idea that a single game can be for anybody or for everybody. I
Yeah,
take a Taylor approach.
if there were one system that was perfect, everyone would play that system, and design would just be a matter of trying to create that system.
Mm-hmm.
But because taste is very individualized, it's good to have lots of variation and lots of different approaches to the same kind of game.
Oh yeah, but I think the first part of it, the easy part of it that we can handle, is adapting the races that I have into Daggerheart's ancestries. Now,
Yes. I do think the races are overall going to be much simpler to convert,
mm-hmm.
because they're simpler than the
Yep.
classes in Legend Edition, and they fill a very similar role in that they sort of clarify how you play a little bit, and then they give you a small benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Daggerheart's ancestries do exactly the same type of thing and are similarly smaller in impact than classes are.
Yeah, and I will admit when it comes to what you get out of races, one of the things I wanted to avoid was having your choice of race be irrelevant late game.
Yep.
And getting one of your feats out of the gate as well as a unique ability is one way to do that. Uh, I certainly don't miss the whole +1 to one ability and -1 to another from like
Yeah.
third edition.
Oh yeah, I
'Cause
that particular style is, yeah, this race plays this type of class. And if you're stepping outside that, you're intentionally de-optimizing.
I remember when 5e tried to make a big deal about, hey, we're getting rid of the whole racial ability modifiers, aren't we great? And I'm like, big fucking whoop! Everybody's done that for years.
Sure, but design changes slower in
Yeah,
the like core D&D
I get
space.
that. It was more of the fact that their predecessor had already done that. The
True,
edition I'm
yes.
supposed to hate, but I don't because the check bounced.
Ah.
Which is my nickname for fourth edition.
So
But
I like 4E, but I also think like on as kind of a taste thing. I can see why people really wouldn't like it. It's a very specific type of game.
I enjoy it, and I also enjoy taking the piss out of some of the weaker criticisms,
Okay.
the ones that aren't the ones that I feel don't really fit this entry or are rehashes of ones I heard about third edition. Uh,
Yep.
the the WoW accusation. I'd probably buy that if it wasn't a rehash of the Diablo accusation back in 2000, as well as the fact that a
Oh.
lot of people saying that, in my opinion, don't know jack shit about MMOs and how they actually work.
Oh, I didn't know there was a precursor to that. I could see where that was coming from. I don't think it's I don't think it's the tightest possible comparison, but I can understand the feeling that it was much more gamey when it was abstracting a lot of
Yeah,
the roleplay elements a bit more.
yeah. The problem for me is I heard that exact same thing in 2000.
Ah, okay. Yep.
Uh, and a sim like a even things like increased healing or going or sticking with ascending AC was treated as being too gamey back then, and some
Oh, I see. Uh, that second ed to 3.0 jump
mhm.
definitely did represent a change in focus and definitely did make D&D gamier, or at least put more of an emphasis on
Yeah.
balancing and reorganizing the way the game was played.
There was a shift in philosophy between balancing over a campaign, so over a whole range of levels, versus balancing at individual levels. I
Yeah.
know they didn't quite. They certainly did not do that.
Well, I think when you have a big complex game that a
Mhm.
lot of people interact with, there will always be balance issues.
I'm more
Complaints
referring to
about
the
balance
mage
in
problem.
1E leading to complaints about balance in 2E, leading to
Yeah,
complaints about balance in 3.5.
the
There's
mage
complaints about
issue has been
balance in
my whipping boy.
5E. Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Uh, and I know that a good chunk of that is because a lot of spellcaster playtesters would cry foul if Marshall's got anything interesting, according to the reports that I've gotten. But
I think I remember hearing something to that accord about the 5e playtesting.
oh
But
yeah, that definitely happened. I know that for a fact. Oh
I I do also think some things can be done with like deliberate asymmetricality in design. You have to build for it intentionally. If it happens by accident, it causes problems.
yeah, I there is some asymmetricality in Legend Edition, but it is it is in very specific areas that aren't meant to bleed into each other. Oh,
Yeah.
there's definitely asymmetricality because I wasn't doing one of the bad habits that showed up a lot in the mid 2000s, which was PCs and NPCs are made the exact same way.
Yep.
There were a lot of games that did that, and it certainly has its place at times. But but when you want to deal with more fantastical um, monsters or non-humanoids, it starts to create problems because in those situations you have to make a whole new. You end up having to be asymmetric anyways to account for some of the unique traits, or you have everybody be a point-based affair, which ends up is going to raise the skill floor.
Yep.
But so with the now obviously for this, I'm not including the races in Ultimania because there's a lot of races in Ultimania. I'm
Oh,
only
yeah.
focusing on the races that are in the core book. Uh, we do have some fun ones in Ultimania, but those aren't going to be the focus for this. The first one is going to be the Aura, the dragon folk that showed up in 14.
Yep.
And you have the Rain and Zayla. Uh, you could kind of see it as the Rain representing the moon as versus the Zayla representing the sun.
Yep.
Uh,
So, yeah, I suppose let's jump right in.
mhm.
Um, there's gonna be there's gonna be a few elements that are sort of automatically cut just by the conversion process.
Yep.
Legend Edition uh, cares about ability modifier, origin skill, bonus feat categories. Daggerheart functionally just cares about the racial feature. Um, and there's a couple of different ways we could approach this. Probably the simplest sort of mechanical translation way of doing it would just be to take the text and reframe it in Daggerheart's mechanics, which is not hard. Uh, you could almost roll it the same way in Daggerheart. It would just be very difficult. Um,
I think the first thing to ponder is of the core ancestries in Daggerheart, if there is a if there is a rough equivalent or something that is or a ancestry that's doing something similar
yeah, if
thematically.
you wanted to do copy and pasting, you could functionally take the text from the Android and put it over Daggerheart's clank and call it a day. Um, it it wouldn't be perfectly identical. They're not the same lore, but you would get something close.
Like I'd say,
And
when I look
oh,
at
sorry, go ahead.
the, I know it'd be tempting to just reflavor the Dracona, but the Dracona don't have enough parallels.
Yeah, is the thing.
Hmm.
Um,
So I think in the case of the Aura, it would have to be just carrying over um the two auras. Um, one of them is so with Tranquil Aura, it is a presence roll, um, which grants one boon on a weapon attack roll, with an additional one for every 5 points that the roll exceeds the TN. Um,
yep.
so for that, in that kind of example, how would you reflavor that so that it
Well,
is more in line with Daggerheart's mechanics?
so the mechanical translation way would be um, something very similar. You make a roll, you pass a check. It gives a bonus to an ally. Daggerheart already has sort of core capabilities for that. Um, but it wouldn't be impossible to write something that does that. But what Daggerheart really likes to do is spend some hope or mark a stress or mark a hit point, use some
Mhm.
kind of resource on your character sheet, and then it does some kind of unilateral effect.
Yeah.
Like if my goal was to kind of vibes translate this, I would say Tranquil Aura, um, you can mark a stress to calm the emotions of a target within range.
Mhm.
And just like that's the full text of the ability. Daggerheart really likes one or two sentence effects.
Yeah.
Um,
The only thing I'd be iffy on mar is marking stress, if only because I'd want to save that kind of thing for I guess bigger affairs, but considering how a
yeah,
a
let's try a variation on that,
mhm,
um, where you can you can choose whether your aura is on or off.
mhm,
When it's on, people around you are naturally predisposed towards calmness. If someone nearby would get agitated, you can mark stress to try and forcibly calm them. Or I guess mark stress to forcibly calm them.
see, that I'd be willing to go with. The the thing about when it comes to resources is there's always going to be a temptation to be conservative with them.
Yeah. Depending on the system's spirit of play. Daggerheart is a system that wants to be messy. It wants people to use their resources and get in trouble and roll with fear and then sort of fight their way back out of the situation they got themselves into.
Yeah. Uh, Now, fortunately, already a there's already a similar I already have a similar rule of five when it comes to difficulty. So, and I'd say, there's already the presence trait, so just having it as a presence trait that grants advantage on an attack roll would be relatively easy, especially since advantage is just a d6. And I already
Yeah.
have boons, which boons and banes work pretty much exactly like they do in Shadow of the Demon Lord.
Okay. Yep.
Um, so it's so honestly, Tranquil Aura that can pretty much be copy pasted wholesale.
Yeah, and that's sort of that's that question about like how granular do you want the translation to be versus how
Yeah.
like vibes based do you want the translation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think you could directly translate a lot of stuff into Daggerheart's system. Um, like you'd have to make some modifications based on difficulty numbers, but they're not going to be severe modifications. Most things are going to be within kind of the same range. 2d12 and d20 are within a close distance of each other. Um, the more you do that style of conversion, though, the more you'll get something that feels like Legend System that's kind of running within Daggerheart's framework,
Mm-hmm.
which could be the intention.
Yeah.
So that question of like how much, how far afield do you want to go
Yeah.
with the conversion?
Which it's going to a middle ground was always kind of the intent.
Okay.
And I'd say I'm trying to remember with Daggerheart with advantage and disadvantage if it caps at 1 or if you can stack it.
Let me double check because as you said, I've been developing Horse Game for most of the week, and it's been a minute since I was working directly on Daggerheart. I do have the SRD open. So I have to figure out where they put the
So
sidebar
what
about
I've written so
advantage.
far is mark 1 stress to make a presence roll with difficulty 15 on a success. One ally gets 1 advantage on their next action roll with 1 additional advantage for every 5 points.
Yeah, I would almost advise making it so. Oh, because you're giving a bonus. But you are spending a resource.
Mm-hmm.
Let
I
me
think
check something
instead of
in.
1 stress, I'd probably have it as spend 1 hope.
This is almost kind of close to the way the Bard works in Daggerheart. Um,
Yep. But
uh, the Bard works sort of like a 5e Bard where they give inspiration dice to people.
mm-hmm.
Um, and they have a once per session that just lets them do that. Um, so you could do something similar and just be once per
Yeah.
session per person in the aura. You can affect them and give them the boon. No roll needed.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. With the Zayla's thing of intimidating aura, which is essentially inverted.
Yep.
There's not an equivalent to skilled defense, obviously. So I think it would probably be just instead of skill defense, would it target evasion?
Yes, you could lower evasion by a set amount. Me double check the phrasing.
Well, the way I have
Monsters.
Good.
Monsters typically have a difficulty, which is what you try to beat to affect them. And so having intimidating aura affect difficulty by an amount would also work.
Oh. Yep, I can go with that. So it'd be presence versus difficulty. Against one opponent. On a success, they suffer a disadvantage to their next action roll with 1 additional for every 5 points.
You could do something like that, yeah.
Oh.
Um, the other thing you could conceivably do with intimidating aura um, would be, again, Daggerheart likes big, splashy, it just works sorts of effects. It could let you make a roll against a monster's difficulty. If you succeed, the monster is frightened and will try to get away from you the next time it acts.
Yep. But hold on a minute because my PDF reader is being a little bit finicky.
Another thing you could potentially do, this would be, I guess, a bit more experimental, but you could have your aura charge when you get certain results on your rolls. So in Daggerheart, you roll with fear or you roll with hope, based on which of your 2 d12s is higher. And it might be interesting to have the intimidating aura charge up when you roll with fear.
It'd be
usually
it'd be tempting, but considering some of the resource stuff that's going to be showing up elsewhere, it might be a bit too much.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Android with fine tuning, obviously the equivalent of feats in Daggerheart is going to be in the domain cards. So
yeah,
I am thinking they can mark 1 stress to adjust to do the same kind of reallocation that normally you'd only be able to do during a short rest. But not to where you essentially where you could do a once per scene respec of the domain cards that you have available.
Oh, okay. There's, yeah, you can already, there's a couple of ways to do that, but being able to shuffle them during a scene, I think is interesting, and is one of the things that I explored when I was working on my Daggerheart supplement. I put together a domain that's specifically focused on using your card deck like it's a roguelike, where everything like shuffles stuff back into your pile, or pulls new things out of your pile, or triggers things that have been pulled.
Pretty much.
That feels potentially in the spirit of. Do you have a gambler class?
Yes. Yes,
yeah,
I do.
that feels potentially in the spirit of something like the gambler.
Which is why I'd be limiting this to once per scene, whereas say a gambler is going to be able to do that more.
Yeah, okay, so this runs into a separate design problem, which is that Legend Edition is large. It has a robust framework for building lots of complexity into it, and it expects people to not have to interact with all of that complexity, but the system is designed in such a way to make it available to the group, and to allow people to build more of their own stuff within that framework too. Daggerheart's framework is tighter. It only expects you to go to about 10 levels in a campaign. Character progression is capped at a much shorter spot than progression in Legend Edition is. It's just kind of compressed by comparison. And so, like, if you were to try and take everything in Legend Edition and put it into Daggerheart, I don't know what it would do to Daggerheart mechanically.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
like Daggerheart already wants to be kind of scant with the types of bonuses you can stack, and writing a single class in Daggerheart feels pretty effort intensive. Because of how much you have to boil everything down. It has to be simple, but it has to really sing.
which
A
I
bigger
did
class.
have that kind of mindset when it came to the individual jobs, where they had to have a particular play style that they were building around.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think these jobs are like they're tightly designed. They feel very coherent.
mhm.
Um, they they're a little more expansive than Daggerheart.
Yeah.
And they're also Daggerheart expects you to be in one class forever, whereas that's not quite the expectation with Legend Edition. Um, like you have your warrior mage expert choice that you're locked into, but outside of that, you have more flexibility with the classes.
Mhm.
And that means that if you were to port the classes kind of one to one to Daggerheart,
Mhm.
you'd either have to get rid of that um, warrior expert mage system, or you'd have to make the classes a little bit more compartmentalized. Or I guess you could just port it all over, but it would do things to Daggerheart's numbers, and you'd have to kind of recalibrate those. Um, like on a Daggerheart roll, you might be adding a total of +4. Uh, like if you've got a lot of stuff going
Yeah.
on.
I do think that it is possible to do it, and like I said, it's one of those things that is there's already going to be some finessing. I knew that from the word go. So it's certainly possible, and well, I do enjoy a challenge. Um,
For sure.
but I had written for Android, mark one stress to swap cards as if resting. You may only do this once per scene. Uh, and
Yeah.
as far as the optional feature, artificial being, which just has it that you can't recover HP through white magic. That's a pretty simple one. You just can't you spells HP recovery from spells just doesn't affect you. Full stop.
Yep.
Uh,
And that's specifically from white magic, and there are lots of other mechanisms for HP recovery.
yeah, but it is basically the droids can't heal from the Force kind of thing in Old Republic.
Yep.
But the Benga, they're all about being resistant to fire and vulnerable to water.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's I think pretty directly convertible. Um,
so the way damage reduction works in Legend Edition is it doesn't reduce the total amount of damage, it minimizes a damage die.
oh, interesting. Okay.
And vulnerability does the opposite. It maximizes the damage die. Uh,
Yeah.
there's also damage protection, which has that any attack roll that does that kind of damage that doesn't roll over a certain threshold automatically misses. Uh, so if you have damage protection 10, and it just means anything that rolls a natural 10 or less is an automatic miss, even if it would have
Got
hit
it.
otherwise. Um, and obviously, damage absorption is exactly what you think it is, and
Yep.
damage spiking is anti-damage reduction. Uh,
Yeah.
but
So Daggerheart does have, I guess, similarly, a couple layers of mitigation.
mhm,
You have your evasion, which is whether you're being hit at all.
yep.
Your armor, which is a resource you can mark
Mhm.
to reduce incoming damage. And then you have a calculation that you do based on the damage that you're taking.
Yeah, the
That
minor,
determines
major,
how
and
many.
severe. Uh,
Yeah, your thresholds that determines how many hit points you mark. And so you could have a type of mitigation that increases your evasion, you could have a type of mitigation that gives you armor, or you could have a type of mitigation that increases your hit points. Um,
I am.
I am going to double check because I think Daggerheart has a couple of effects that already interact with this kind of thing. Just gonna glance over at the Guardian class because I remember them having something to this effect.
Mhm. So
So, an easy way to do this would be to say fire damage against you is reduced by d6,
mhm.
ice damage is increased by d6. Another way you could do it is um, you may always freely mark an armor slot against fire damage. You may never mark armor against ice or water, rather. They have water vulnerability.
Uh,
Um,
I think the approach that I'd probably take is uh, your if you're hit with a fire attack, you're automatically treated as if you marked a armor slot, even the
yeah,
base you basically get a free armor slot against fire attacks. And as you mentioned before, you cannot mark armor against water attacks.
yeah. That would provide very hard protection against fire.
Mhm.
Which I don't think is bad. Maybe the other simple way to do it is just you have +2 threshold against fire attacks and -2 threshold against water.
That I'm fine with.
Yeah, that will still cause you to get hit by fire. It'll just be less likely to do more than a point of damage.
Mhm. Uh, but see, when it comes to Burmesians, who that is essentially the rat folk you saw in FF9.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah,
the
the nine races are tricky. I never felt like I had a very clear sense of what any of their deal was, other than just kind of animal folk.
mhm. Well, this will probably come as little surprise, but one of the big inspirations for the design direction for 9 was the Dark Crystal.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Uh,
Okay. There is a kind of like Gelfling look to a lot of the nine races.
mhm. But the Burmesians' whole thing is being able to use skill rolls to sense the environment through vibrations.
Yeah.
Essentially having tremor sense. Um,
Yeah. You could just in Daggerheart terms just say you can sense the environment through vibrations. Even when blinded, you are still able to perceive in this manner.
uh,
Um,
So I'd put it that you essentially you have tremor sense and you do not suffer penalties from being blinded.
Yeah.
Let's see, with the dwarf, they have tunneler. I think that'd just be when making action rolls while underground, you gain advantage. Uh,
Uh, yeah, that's potentially really strong in Daggerheart. Let me see if I can find an equivalent.
well, let me rephrase that. Action rolls that are not combat.
Even then, that's pretty strong compared to. I mean, you have some decently strong effects
Mhm.
from races in Daggerheart. Um, but in terms of what Daggerheart gives out advantage for, I'm gonna grab an example from the document. Um, Daggerheart elves can gain advantage specifically on reaction rolls and in exchange for marking stress. Um, Infernus have advantage just in general when intimidating characters. Um, Simia have advantage in general when balancing or climbing. Um, yeah, no, maybe that's not that far off. Maybe my reaction there was wrong.
Yeah.
You could maybe further specify advantage to finding your way underground and working on construction projects or something like that.
Like being underground, I'd say is the main thing. Construction projects, that's a little specific.
Yeah, Daggerheart likes that specificity.
Oh yeah, but let's see, for Elzen, this would be a tricky one because the way I have it for them is once per session you can get one treasure type item without having to make a roll. You can only use this
Yep.
feature during downtime.
Yeah, this is probably pretty easy actually. Daggerheart has a very loose money system where
Which is funny to me because the money system I have for Legend Edition is one of the things that people keep insisting was my worst decision ever for the game.
uh hang on. Let me look closer at the Legend Edition money system so I
Yeah,
can
you it is
see.
essentially a check. You higher items require a higher check. It is using a resources stat.
Oh,
You can
okay,
spend
Eclipse Phase style.
yeah, you can spend a resource called stake to boost the roll. If you try and boost it after the fact, it costs twice as much.
Honestly, I'd take these rules. I'd keep your stake and investment rules and put them in Daggerheart.
Uh,
Um, I think Daggerheart's very good at abstracting things, but its wealth mechanics feel a little bit sparse.
from what I saw, they just had um, just traditional GP. Just the money values are more abstracted.
They're very abstracted. You have either like a coin or a handful or a bag. Um, and that's the extent of it. It's
Yeah,
not a game that wants to focus on like saving up to buy new items.
that'll
It
get.
wants you to like quest for an item.
Mhm.
Um,
That'll certainly be interesting. What if I talk about the merchant? Uh, but let's see, Hume baseline
the other
Hume.
thing you could maybe do for let me scroll all the way back up. The other thing you could maybe do instead of providing gold would be exchanging an item on the loot table for another item on the loot table. That feels like it falls within the sort of narrative flavor of favor for favor. Um, Daggerheart's loot table is a lot of like sort of miscellaneous, useful but not very combat relevant magic items. Um, or mostly not very combat relevant.
Um,
There are exceptions. So being
I
able to kind of randomize stuff would be interesting.
I'd say because looking at the whole tier effect on it compared to what I have for is I'd say whenever they do on the loot table, they always choose the higher dice pool. So if they're
Yeah.
so if they're rolling on common, they always choose 2d12.
Yep. Yeah. You cast in an item and then you roll the higher of the two pools for that item. So this would allow you to sometimes up tier an item, or sometimes down tier.
So with the Hume, the baseline Hume has leap to action, which I blatantly stole from 13th Age. When determining initiative, you roll twice and choose the higher result.
Yep.
I think that'd just be advantage to initiative.
Uh, let me triple check Daggerheart's initiative because its combat flow is strange.
It is. It's doing things a bit loose when it comes to initiative.
Yeah.
So I'd say uh,
Okay.
I'd say you can mark one stress to at the start of combat to act first.
Well, okay, hang on. Let me glance at the rogue just in case they have an equivalent ability so I can borrow the phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
They do not. Let me glance at the ranger just on the off chance that they have an equivalent ability. They do not. Okay. I'm gonna look back at the spotlight system in Daggerheart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the general Daggerheart flow is that a player does something, they roll with fear, or the GM spends a fear, or a monster activates an ability, um, and the spotlight shifts back to the GM, and then the GM does something, and the spotlight shifts back to a player. Um,
I think it might be interesting if potentially that a Hume can mark a stress whenever a the GM marks fear to steal that.
yeah, it could be interesting. This feels like it's a hope spend. This feels like it's potentially big and disruptive. Then the GM
If it would
takes the
be
spotlight. You
if it
can
would
listen to them announce what they're going to do, and then you spend 3 hope to interrupt them and steal the spotlight back. That would be interesting.
if that's the case, I think that might be too powerful for a racial feature. So I
Yeah,
think
there are some hope spend racial features.
mhm. I think
In
in well,
Daggerheart.
I'm not opposed to a hope spend, but I think 3 for a racial feature might be pushing it because people are going to be very defensive with it.
So a comparison would be the dwarf in Daggerheart. They have a spend 3 hope to have incoming physical damage.
Mhm.
3 hope is a big spend, but that potentially throws combat back in their favor. The fairy has a 3 hope spend to re-roll the dice.
Yeah. I would. Is what this given what this is doing, I think it would have. Yeah, the more that I think about it, the more I think, yeah, it'd have to be the 3 hope effect. Especially since there isn't really a action order in a set manner.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I guess you could make it simpler and just say when the spotlight would shift to the GM, you can. Hang on, let me double check basic hope spends, because it's possible I'm just describing something hope already does. Okay.
I think it might be interesting to have it that up. Instead, they could either help an ally or initiate a tag team roll once per scene without spending hope.
Oh, tag team without hope spend is strong, but that is interesting. I do like that.
It is once per scene.
Yep. The advantage of the tag team roll in Daggerheart is both that it makes you more likely to succeed because you're rolling twice and taking the best result, but it also makes you more likely to succeed with hope, which means you're likely to farm currency off of it as well.
Yeah. I am putting a thing as you can't do both. So if you choose to help an ally using this, you're cut off from using that benefit for a tag team roll, and vice versa.
Is this leap to action instead of if you take the Albert or Garlean racial feature? Okay, so it can be relatively strong on its own. The other thing is the Daggerheart ancestries usually have 2 abilities that are relatively strong. These generally have 1, but if you're going to be getting a lot of stuff from your class, or if you're going to be having multiple classes, you probably don't need to overload these.
Oh yeah. So hold on a moment, because my notepad decided that it wants to be a dingus.
No problem.
But and while this can certainly be powerful to get either of those for free, the reason I phrased it that way is because the player is going to have to make tough choices, and that is something I'm all for.
Yeah. If you wanted to tone it down just a hair, you could make it so that once per scene, when you initiate a tag team roll, it costs 2 hope less. So you're still spending something, but it's not as costly.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, Notepad, why are you being so difficult? That's fine. Technology, it loves to give us the middle finger.
Yep. I'm surprised
Uh,
it's Notepad that's the problem, because, like, you could code that thing by banging two stones together.
yep. Okay. Now it's cooperating. And all I was doing was just some spell check. What the hell? Anyways, let's see, as far as the Albed version, interests would more or less be the same as experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, actually. That converts very gracefully.
Uh, Now there is the difference that experiences aren't a aggregate like they are with when it comes to the knowledge. Because one thing I desperately did not want is a bunch of knowledge skills.
Yep.
And I know some might say, "Oh, you're probably traumatized by third edition's knowledge skills." No, I was traumatized by Fantasy Games Unlimited's ridiculous skill lists.
Yeah, there is that, like, D100 approach to everything must be a skill and every skill must be granular, that you get in some
Basic,
stuff.
basic role playing. Oh,
Uh, yeah, BRP is roll percentage for kazoo type
yeah.
system.
I'd like to think they've gradually come off of that cocaine high these days. And when I did the interview about of Hearth and Harrowing, which is using a modified version of BRP, it's nowhere near that bad. Uh,
Yeah.
Personally, my big whipping boy when it comes to just excessive skill lists and a bunch of other things is Palladium.
Yeah, although that's kind of their market, it's kind of their design style. Um I can see there being like valid critique for it. But it calls to some players in a way.
Uh, well, and there's other problems I have with Palladium, chiefly
Yep.
navigation.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Um, let's see, as far as the white gem for Garleans, um,
Yep.
it basically means that
So
you
I
can
actually
use
I have some
orienteering.
questions about that. Uh that kind of makes orienteering a super skill, right? Like you can apply it to anything you're doing as part of an action.
Um, not necess not necessarily, uh, because all it is swapping orienteering for what your normal skill would be. There are
Yep.
very specific actions in combat for Legend Edition that use particular skills. Bull Rush is one of the examples given. Uh,
Okay. This is from a this is from a tightly curated action list that you can now use orienteering on.
yeah. So, for example, Bull Rush normally uses athletics. Um,
Yep.
Feint uses acrobatics. Not acrobatics, misdirection. Trip uses acrobatics. Grapple uses athletics.
Okay.
And of course, there's still the matter of you need to actually succeed. And those kind of effects do unless you're doing particular builds do not do damage. Like on their own, say Bull Rush just inflicts knockdown instead of doing damage.
Yeah. I guess the way to do this would be uh once per scene you can roll with presence on an attack instead of the trait you would normally use. You could also make it any number of times per scene. You can mark stress to roll with presence instead of your normal trait.
Marking stress, I think, would be a better move for this one instead of once per scene. That kind of substitution I don't think is powerful enough to be a one per scene kind of thing.
Yeah, it's... The advantage to it being free would be that it's free. Whereas stress puts the resource cost on it. But I don't think it's a bad resource cost, and you're potentially getting a value of +3 for marking it.
Yep. So once per scene, so you can mark one stress to use presence for an action roll instead of its normal trait.
Yes.
Let's see, with Mithra, they have Cat's Luck. Once per session, you can flip 1d20 roll. This roll, i.e. the natural result, is treated as 21 minus what you rolled. This new result may not be activated as a critical success or a critical failure.
Okay. This one's super easy. Just once per session, you can swap the values on your Hope and Fear dice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is actually quite strong, but I don't think outside of the realm of what you can expect to get from a character trait in this system.
Not to mention, its strength is very specific. Yep. Like, if it's one of those cases where the only time you're going to use it is if you want to ensure that you roll with Hope and you rolled really poorly on Hope and really well on Fear.
Well, so this is something that feels like it's kind of neutral in Legend Edition, but is just universally quite good in Daggerheart.
Yep.
It's always worth swapping your dice in Daggerheart.
The game becomes, is this the right roll? Is this the right roll to do it? Because you're only getting one shot. You're only getting it once.
It does become more of a clutch move. There are times where you might be failing a roll, and swapping the dice won't cause you to succeed, because whether or not you pass the check is based on adding them together. But you still want to swap them because it's better to fail with Hope than to fail with Fear.
Yep. With Moogle, I think that one can be just carried over straight.
Yep.
Which, calling it Moogle Paradox was kind of an in-joke when I was playing through Lightning Returns. Because the question of, well, if you're lost in the forest, why don't you just fly over? And the Moogle's response was, I'm scared of heights.
Yeah.
And I just ad-libbed Moogle Paradox and it kind of stuck.
Yep.
But, see, for Rogadin, I think that one would be really easy to do.
Yeah, you could just have it give you an extra HP slot, I think.
For Rons...
Surprise, motherfucker!
For Ronso, and welcome to the shit show, Hydra. This is about choosing one environment. You do not suffer banes generated by that environment.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you don't suffer disadvantage when in it. Just
just the environment doesn't affect you specifically. Yeah, that's a pretty easy. You can kind of vibe convert that and just say that you don't suffer penalties for that specific type of terrain.
Yeah.
Let me see if the ranger has an equivalent, because there might be some language we could steal there. Nope. Nope, it does not. I will double check the druid just in case they have something that might be relevant.
Mhm.
No, the druid is based around elements and animals,
Yep.
not terrain.
So the Tarutaru, this would be a bit of a tricky one just because of the way spells work.
Yes. Especially because, yeah, so I guess the equivalent of spells is domains.
Mhm.
And there is a spellcast trait in Daggerheart, so you could have this affect that.
So the way metamagic works in Legend Edition is spells have a sliding level that they can be cast at. The level, or rather rank, determines the target number for the casting roll to see if you can actually cast it. And the the um, the spell English monk, the applying a metamagic feat increases the relative level by 1.
Okay.
This means that even if something like fire is only single target, because it has the full range, you can do a lot more if you're willing to give up damage. Compared to cast, because the idea was to make sure that fire isn't just automatically replaced by Fira or Firaga or Firaja.
Yep. Okay. Easiest way to do this is just you get +1 on spellcast rolls.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is if there's anything else that gives this type of bonus, we probably don't want to write it this way every time, because if it all stacks, then Daggerheart's mechanics start to spindle, fold, and mutilate.
What I was thinking is the recall cost for spells is reduced by 1.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I like that as well.
This does mean that they are going to be doubling down a lot on casters, but that's kind of the case with Tarutaru in general. They make up for their small stature by being really, really good mages.
Yeah. Let me real quick. The other thing you could do is, let me see if there are domains that actually would work with this at all. I was thinking this could be when an effect would place one of your domain cards in your vault. Once per session, you can instead keep the card active. Because one thing that some of the Daggerheart spells do is they get vaulted when they're used up.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not all of them, and it's spell specific.
Yeah, I'm thinking of going with this because it means that when it comes to low tier spells, they can swap those out very easily. With higher tier spells, it's not as costly for them to swap.
Yeah.
And for spells that are one-offs and then they get vaulted and you can't take them out, this isn't going to affect them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just lowering the recall cost by 1 is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe to a minimum of 1. There aren't too many recall cost 1 domain abilities, but there are some.
Which the idea is that they are going to be shifting their spell repertoire a lot, but it also means that they're not going to be. They have to decide how much they want to dedicate to spells compared
Yeah.
to abilities. So I do think it evens itself out in a kind of how much are you willing to pay up.
Yeah. The other thing is with recall. When you recall, you swap it into your active.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blanking on the language for it, but you
Yeah.
pull it out of your vault, you swap it into your active cards,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you put one of your active cards back in the vault. So every time something gets vaulted, your hand size is functionally decreasing, unless you have a way of unvaulting stuff without recalling it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, minus one recall just as a way of representing your flexibility, I do think is good.
Let's see. When it comes to the Varg, which are basically the werewolves from 5,
Yup.
they have a natural claw or bite attack.
Yup. That is so. Unarmed attacks in Daggerheart are a D4, I believe, with functionally no benefits. They're really bad. Everything else is handled through weapons,
Mm-hmm.
except for monsters, which just have the attack written onto their sheet.
Yeah.
So what you could do is their unarmed attack is a D6 plus their tier. Yeah, I think that would scale properly. That doesn't give them a great unarmed attack. And looks like they have template tag. Does that tag do anything mechanical? Traumatizing?
Yes.
Okay.
Because weapons are built on a meta type, whether they're physical or arcane, i.e., whether they're using the physical or magical side of attack and defense. The template, which determines both the base damage as well as how it uses the extra effort rule, and tags, which are little customizations that weapons can have. Normal weapons have 3 because this is a natural weapon. It only has 1. Close is a D8 melee attack with a extra effort threshold of 4, so an extra D4 for every 4 points that attack beats defense.
Okay.
So.
All right. I think I have it then.
So
I think
with
for the
traumatizing,
Varg-
let me grab that. Just says that if you crit, you inflict bleeding and battered. Battered cannot be removed until bleeding is removed.
Okay. All right. We could. I can poke around the monster section and see if I can find a bleed equivalent. I know I used one in my own stuff. I think a super easy way to do this would be the Varg's unarmed attack deals D6 plus tier damage, and you can mark a stress to apply vulnerable until. Varg's unarmed attack does d6 plus tier damage.
Mm-hmm.
You may mark stress to apply vulnerable on the next attack that the target takes.
I'd have it that if the attack is a critical, it applies vulnerable automatically.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
I.e., if you crit, you don't have to mark stress to apply vulnerable. It just happens.
Yeah, 100%. That works. Let me see if I can just real quick dig up a bleed effect in core. There is not. There is not a bleed effect. I'm gonna real quick check my own Daggerheart stuff and see what I wrote for bleed there.
But the last of the races is the Viera.
Okay.
They can use orienteering rolls to sense the elemental affinities of an area or an NPC, as well as locating supernatural effects using orienteering.
Okay. That's interesting and tricky. How punishing is it to fail a roll to sense something's elemental affinity?
Not really, you just fail.
Okay. In that case, it's probably pretty reasonable to convert that as you can sense the elemental affinities of areas and people. Supernatural effects are a separate thing on page 191. Let me skip over there and have a look. I don't actually see it on 191.
What it's referring to is through things like searching, and specifically the sidebar about no spot checks.
Okay. Okay. All right. This is a thing that we could just write it as a very simple yes full stop kind of Daggerheart rule. You can sense the elemental affinities of areas and people. You can perceive when something is supernaturally hidden, or you can perceive things that are supernaturally hidden, even if it wouldn't normally be possible.
I put the whole no spot checks thing because I didn't want orienteering to fall into the same problem that, well, Spot has.
Yeah. Yeah, it's... Spot is tricky. Partly because, like, people are conditioned to look for it, so if it's not there in the system, people get a little confused.
Well,
but also
that and everybody's checking for traps.
Yeah, 100%. It slows game down, and like people will stop if they know they roll bad, and that introduces a meta element. Yeah, there's a lot of problems that spiral out of it. But when you don't have it, you need to have a really strong trust between the GM and players that the GM isn't like obfuscating stuff. But
which
part
at
of
that point,
interesting
that's out of my
GMing
control.
is true, but like. It's also a circumstance that you can kind of expect. And I think, like, people end up having to design for those kinds of things inevitably, either by saying, this is something that this game doesn't do, you just need to trust your group, or by offering some tools or recommendations for how to deal with it, or by building in a perception system.
I chose the simpler route.
Yeah, I like that approach. I've done that there is no perception thing before, and it's worked really well. It takes a little finagling.
So when it comes to the jobs, because covering the classes would be redundant, I'm not going to cover limit breaks because that is something that I don't think really fits here, or or not in the way that I have it fit within Legend Edition. Uh,
Uh, I think a case could be made that limit breaks are similar to hope features.
so the reason I'm a bit hesitant is the idea with a limit break in Legend Edition is it is not a uber attack that you use after building up meter. That was
Yep.
something I did not want to do because you're going to be doing a bunch of resource tracking enough as is. Uh, Instead, it is a cheat. It is a cheat you can activate when you're below half health, lasts the duration of the encounter, and is basically doing what that particular job or class would already be doing, just a lot better. The catch is, of course, once you activate one of your limit breaks, you are locked off from using any of the other ones for the rest of that encounter.
Yep. I'm looking back through Daggerheart's hope features, and I'm realizing how many of these are exclusively combat oriented. I
Which,
definitely had it in my head that these were much more varied, but that's not the case. Everything else has non-combat uses, but the hope features, with the exception of like the druid, which has beast form.
so that being said, instead of going into the individual circles for the jobs, what I think we'll do instead is thematically decide whether or not an individual job could work as a subclass of an existing class in the core book, or if it should be made into its own class, and what domains would be the best fit.
Yeah. I guess the other thing potentially you could do, maybe this is actually the right way to approach things, would be to treat the jobs as domains. Because that feels pretty close to their role. You have a couple of jobs in Legend Edition, and you have usually 2 domains in Daggerheart. And your job and domain provide you with a list of abilities that you can call on. So if we convert the jobs into domains, and we convert the classes in Legend Edition into classes in Daggerheart, I think that works.
The tricky part with that is that there's not a whole lot you get from your class in Legend Edition.
Yeah.
It is a chassis that's determining your starting HP, MP, and skills that you have trained.
Maybe that's the specific identity of this conversion, is that the classes in this conversion are very simple, and it's the domains that are much more interesting, and you get more domains per character in Legend Edition Daggerheart.
So, given that, I think it'd be best to look at the jobs and what domains they'd be adjacent to narrow that down to see and this would be something I'd be doing on my own time, to see what domains would what domains they might have some overlap with, and what ones would need to be their own beast. But I do think some of the jobs could function as subclasses, at the very least.
Probably. Let me glance through the master list here. So the thing with Daggerheart is that it doesn't give you a lot of mobility in terms of how far you can take your character from their class. Like, you can subclass, you can give them a little bit more flavor, can slightly change how they operate, but otherwise they're pretty locked in. Whereas you have more lateral freedom in Legend Edition. A question about independent jobs. Can those be taken by any class?
Any job can be taken by any class. The only rule is at least one of your jobs has to be associated with your class.
Oh, I read that wrong. I thought all three of them had to be associated with your class.
No.
Okay, all right. That's even more lateral freedom. Goodness.
This does mean that you can't build a character that is all independence.
True, but with something like 55 jobs to choose between, only one of them has to be in your class category. You will get very unique characters.
This is
even if you just roll random.
Yeah, this is why I was considering seeing which, this is why I said, which ones thematically would fit into subclasses and which don't, what classes they'd be associated with, what domains to go with, because with some of the jobs there is going to be some thematic overlap.
Yeah. So if we wanted to vastly overscope the size of the task, what we could do is have each job have functionally a sort of a class package that applies, and then a domain. And I realize I'm recommending doing this for 55 jobs. It's a nightmarish amount of work. But what this would do is it would both add some granularity to your class, instead of just being warrior, expert, mage. You would be warrior, berserker. And then that would also give you the berserker's domain cards. But then you would pick 2 more classes and get the domain cards from them. Pick 2 more jobs and get the domain cards from them, but not the class bonus from those other 2.
See, that I'd be willing to go with. The thing that would be tricky is the fact that when you suggested the idea of having each of the individual jobs as their own type of domain, that I was against, because some of them I don't think there's enough there to do that.
Yeah, I think they would have to be, for human sanity reasons, significantly shorter than Daggerheart domains, because a domain will have about 20 abilities.
And the casters could do that fine, but the non-casters, not so much.
Yeah, I think what you would potentially do is break the jobs down to maybe the job domains down to like 10 abilities each, or lower.
But for the sake of sanity, and because I wouldn't want to have you here all night, let's instead go with the job list that Legend Edition has, and what domains might thematically lean in that direction.
Yeah,
I think that is a decent enough compromise, starting with Berserker.
Yeah. The thing is, Berserker's not going to have an exact counterpart
Well,
in the domain list. It's going to be close to Blade. It's going to be close to Bone. If I was making Berserker as a class, I would probably make it a Blade and Bone class.
Yep. I can go with that. Dervish, which is the speed-based sister to Berserker.
Yup. My temptation would be to make that a Blade and Valor class, maybe, or a Blade and Midnight, maybe. Midnight is a little bit more misdirection. Blade and Grace would be fine.
Grace, I'd say, is more apropos, because they're not really misdirecting. It's more that they're just hitting more instead of hitting hard.
Yeah, well, when I look at Midnight, I think Rain of Blades, um, being an early Midnight ability, feels
Mhm.
Dervish territory.
Yep.
But most of their other stuff, Glyph of Nightfall, Phantom Retreat, Shadowbind, stuff like that, is more misdirection.
Yeah, which is given that, I think
One potential approach would be just to sort of dump out all the Legos from the Daggerheart box. Just take all of these individual abilities and reassign them to Final Fantasy jobs, and then start making small calibration changes from there to put them more in the job's flavor.
if I
That
was
would,
to make them into a set, if I was to make a whole new set of domains, I think what I would do instead is make a set of domains based on the 8 elements that are common to FF.
yeah.
Uh, so that would be, and the thing is, the classes already have each one lean into a a particular elemental crystal. Um,
Yep.
and so I think the approach that I have it is the warrior jobs are tied to the earth crystal. The expert jobs are tied to the wind crystal. The mage jobs are tied to the fire crystal.
Yep.
And the adept jobs are tied to the um, wind crystal. Independent jobs are tied to dark, but I could go with either light or dark.
Yep.
Because independent jobs are not far removed from prestige classes in the sense that there is a bit of a higher skill floor with them, which is why I put it in the book. I don't recommend um, picking a independent focused build as your first character. You can
Yep.
do it if you want to, but there is going to be a higher skill floor.
Yeah.
So now, given that, I think what we'll do instead is flip that. I will go from top to bottom with the domains from Daggerheart. You can tell me um, element you think would fit them.
I mean, I don't I don't know how well that's gonna work. Like
All right.
I can look at Valor and say, yeah, obviously light element, but the the conversion from Valor into light into applying it to some independent jobs is gonna be
That
really messy and imprecise, I
that
think.
is that is fair. So I think it's because the one thing I don't want to do is have a berserker domain, a dervish domain, and so on.
Yeah, I agree. That would be an extraordinary amount of labor.
Yeah,
Um, uh,
but
I,
if I gave you if I gave you the general gist of each of the jobs' kit, could you come up with a close equivalent as far as what it might be a subclass of and what domain would fit?
so I can look at a kit and I can start sort of assembling a class that
Mhm.
kind of matches that kit.
Yeah,
The tricky part is going to be, let me grab a class for an example. Um, the knight, for example. Uh, Gain break arts equal to your physical combat modifier. Sunder is based on making a successful weapon attack. You gain more break arts. You gain a bonus when targeted with a combat maneuver. When weapon attacking targets currently afflicted by a break art.
Well,
These are combat focused.
I think we can
And
narrow it down to which ones do you suppose would work as their own domain, and which ones might be better being folded into an existing domain.
gotcha.
I think that might be a decent compromise.
Yeah. Okay, so you're not opposed to writing a couple of domains.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
this.
in that case, let's group some classes into clusters.
Mhm.
Or some jobs into clusters.
All right. So when it comes to those clusters, would you build it around the four classes that we have, or
I would do subcategories within the 4 classes. For example, within Warrior, I think you could group... Like, I think Berserker and Dervish have some commonality. I think Fencer, Fighter, Knight, Samurai have some commonality. Same with Sentinel. Same with Weapon Master.
So
I think you could take some of those clusters and assign them to a group and build a domain around that group. And I think also some of those clusters would be outside of the class list. Like, you can look at Berserker and look at Ravager under Mage and maybe group those together.
yeah, so what I'm gonna do, what I have on my notes is the 4 classes as groups. These would be the general side of things. The more specific ones are the ones where their kit would demand its own domain. Does that work?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, or at least like a couple of bespoke domains that you could apply to multiple jobs.
yeah. So with Berserker, I think that can fit within within our warrior domain. Same with Dervish. Dragoon, I think not.
Yeah, Dragoon feels like it has its own style.
Yeah. Same with Fencer. Both have their own set of very specific techniques exclusive to them.
Yep.
Fighter could. Since the whole thing with Fighter is just being a walking arsenal.
Yep.
Knight, that is going to be in the same category as Dragoon and Fencer. I'd say Monk definitely, given the complexities that Monk has.
Yeah, and for the job that feel like they have a very distinct own flavor, that's easier to represent through sort of their class package.
Yep. Samurai, same thing because of its mix of Kenki and Hisat's techniques.
Yep.
Sentinel, due to Overwatch techniques, yes.
Yeah, I think we're gonna end up with a lot of jobs feeling very individual, though.
Yeah. Sniper and Weapon Master, those aren't gonna be in that subcategory.
Yeah.
Because Yeah, Sniper has things like Cold Strike, but it isn't as extensive as to be a sub ability the way Fencer has lunge techniques.
Yeah.
When it comes to the expert jobs, I think Chemist could be a main.
Yeah, you could potentially group them with Medic, maybe.
Oh, let's see. Covert Ops also a main.
Yeah.
Let's see. Dynamo, not.
Yeah.
Uh,
Entertainer, Noble, Mediator, maybe as a grouping.
I think most of the jobs that have a companion would be in that secondary list.
Yeah.
Entertainer is definitely one, as well as Gambler.
Yeah.
I do remember when I was designing Gambler, one of the things I wanted to do was simplify the reels mechanic.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of making it literally like a slot machine, which works in the video games but doesn't work as well in tabletop unless you build your base mechanic around that.
Yeah, objectively funny to have one player rock up to the table with an entire slot machine. Like, that would be cool, but a little bit burdensome for the group.
Let's see. And there isn't an equivalent to Medic in the video games, but I wanted a non-magical option for healing.
Yep.
But let's see. Noble would fit into the primary category. And so would Squire. Actually, no, Squire, because of how much it is dependent on the party, Squire would go into the secondary. Thief would go into the primary. Which that's a decent split between the two of them.
Yeah.
When it comes to the mage entries, I'd say Arcanist is definitely in that secondary.
Yep. Black and White Mage are almost certainly primaries.
I'd say Black, White, and Cosmic.
Yeah. I guess you could fold Necromancer into Black Mage. I guess you could fold Ravager into Black Mage. It's pretty similar. And Red Mage and Sage and Scholar are a little bit more generalized.
I'd say Necromancer, because it has the companion, would fall into the secondary.
Yeah. Summoner and Yokai, I think, are kind of weird and distinctive enough.
Oh, yeah. Ravager is definitely a primary. Since the whole thing with them is just spell spamming.
Yeah.
It's just that they can only spell spam low-level spells. But, see, Red Mage is essentially a switch hitter. But I think that can still go in primary. Sage, secondary. Sage is meant to be chaos.
Yep.
I mean, Sage is heavily inspired by Tella remembering spells in FF4.
Oh, gotcha.
Scholar, which is meant to be the castiest caster, is most certainly in primary. I'd imagine the big thing with Scholar would be further manipulating your hand with much more easily, or even having a secondary hand that you have limited effects with, like a set of secondary spells that when you use them they are vaulted and you can't get them back. At least you can't
Yep.
get them back until a long rest.
Yeah.
Summoner and yokai definitely have to be in that secondary list. Summoner because of the particular companion that it has, and yokai because yokai is a dozen plus jobs in one.
Yep.
And if there's any that I think could operate under their own domain, it is yokai because when picking yokai, you have to pick what Eidolon you're a yokai of.
Yep.
And because of that, it is the only job you can take more than once. Let's see, as far as adepts, Beastmaster is a companion, so same rule applies. I did get some guff on the fact that I don't have a ranger job. The reason I don't is because everything that a typical D&D ranger could do is handled elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like the animal companion thing, Beastmaster does that. The whole natural casting thing, Geomancer does that. The whole really good at ranged attacks, well, anybody can be good at ranged attacks. None of the jobs here have weapon requirements that specific. But a lot of people are gonna turn towards sniper. Sniper originally was called archer. And when you look at the way archers are depicted in Final Fantasy, they're rangers in all but name.
Yeah. Yeah, Ranger is usually just the hard-focused physical attack ranged weapons class.
Yep. Blue Mage, I actually think Blue Mage would be a primary.
Yeah, incidentally, good luck with Blue Mage. Anytime I've built any type of Blue Mage anything into a game, it's immediately become a design nightmare.
Well, it's because Blue Mage doesn't have a very strong theme.
Yeah, I like stuff that works in that fashion, that lets you steal monster abilities and use them, but it requires all monsters to be written in a way that can prevent that from disrupting the game.
Yeah.
Your Blue Mage, I don't think steals monster abilities.
It does.
It does. Okay, that's under Blue Magic. It's not under the class description.
The thing when it comes to blue mages is that their spells are not subject to the spell slot restrictions.
Yep.
But you're not getting their spells from leveling up.
Yep, you have to get hit with them. Okay,
Either get hit with them or use the Libra feature.
Yep.
Which getting hit with them guarantees you get the spell. Libra is a roll to try and get the spell in a safer manner.
Yep.
But let's see, Dark Knight. I'd say Dark Knight could be a primary. I think in something like Daggerheart, it would just be a case of things where you would normally spend stress or spend hope. You're spending, you're spending HP.
Yeah, I think that works fine.
It would be amusing to have some sort of charging effect that gets stronger the more the GM spends fear.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Having something that charges up when the GM spends fear, and maybe having some abilities, some passive effects that are active when you have most of your HP marked, feels in flavor for Dark Knight.
I'd say Geomancer is definitely in that secondary. Um,
Yep.
there was some pushback about why I don't have Geomancer as a mage. Except it's made pretty clear Geomancy and Geotrance is not magic. It has only been magic once.
Yeah.
And that's not every other time that it's been used, it's a case of you can use these effects for free, but you are locked to using the effects that are tied to the environment. And making it a mage would mean I'd have to make a Geomancy spell list, and no matter what, that's a spell list that you're only going to be able to use a small fraction of. But Illusionist, which is actually pretty fun if someone wants to really be evil with it, I'd say as a primary. The ability to cast spells outside of your turn, even if you have to set them up in advance, I think could make for some pretty fun stuff when it comes to how Daggerheart works.
Yeah. Yeah, having stuff that triggers on Spotlight Shift would be interesting.
Well, the way the Veil works is you set up the spell and you set up what the trigger parameters is.
Yep.
So, could it be on Spotlight? Yes. Could it be activated when one particular character rolls with hope? Also, yes.
Yeah.
They're effectively the job for people who played way too much Yu-Gi-Oh growing up.
Yep. Yeah, I do like that style of play.
Let's see, Magic Knight. I'd say that'd be a primary. Ninja, I would say, is all. Even though it has its combat abilities and ninjutsu, I don't think that's enough to put it into the realm of a secondary.
Yeah.
Oracle is based on the whole odds and evens thing.
Yep.
And I think that, especially the fact that it likes to be something of a switch hitter, I think would put it in secondary.
Yeah.
Paladin, much like with Dark Knight, is a primary. I do remember some pushback about the fact that I chose to not give Paladins a limited form of white magic.
Yeah, although, like, it's very Final Fantasy to kind of vary what a given class can do.
Pretty much.
Over the course of different games. Like, everything is ultimately picking how to represent something.
Yeah. I felt that the core of the Paladin identity was cover. Not necessarily white magic, and because of the way the 3-job setup works, if I gave it white magic, then there would be the issue of making either the white mage or paladin irrelevant when it comes to their uses of white magic. And I'm not the biggest fan of the way half casters are often used.
Yeah.
Because it feels like a kit bash.
Yeah. It's more interesting for them to have a distinct individual identity than for them to be kind of an average of two other classes.
Yeah. When a lot of those average of two classes kind of thing, which was all over the place in AD&D.
Oh yeah.
A big problem with them is, what do they have that those main two can't do? And I think it's important to look at character classes and the like positions in a sport.
Well, with with those sort of AD&D split classes, I think they do make more sense in a game with a very high character mortality rate. Um, in the same way that like the EXP charts being different make sense in that environment. If the thief can level up really fast, but the thief is prone to dying, it
Mhm.
kind of balances out.
Yeah. Although those kind of things end up running contrary to the sales pitch that people have of, oh, you can run any kind of fantasy in AD&D or the like.
Oh, I goodness. I wouldn't pitch AD&D as the you can run any kind of fantasy in it.
People did to me.
Yeah. I guess that's just kind of the curse of D&D. People will look at its prevalence and assume it must be because it can do everything well,
Mhm. Yeah.
rather than just like humans are endlessly innovative and will find ways to convert stuff, even if
Yep.
it's not an easy conversion.
But with the Rune Knight, which is a dedicated anti-mage, I feel like that
Yep.
should go into secondary because, uh, especially since, and this might be tricky to adapt. One of the big things with Rune Knight is you do not have permanent HP, permanent MP. Any MP that you have is temporary. You always start encounters with 0 MP, and the main way for you to get it is through things like Runic or Siphon.
Yeah, I don't think that's hard at all. If you just use like a custom token, um, and you use Runic or Siphon, gain an MP token, and then you have some abilities that spend those MP tokens.
Um, would you have would you have MP tokens work for casters? Like for the different types of mage, they'd be using those tokens, or would you still have
Uh,
that as
yeah, yeah, that's tricky, because of the way we're structuring this. Um, yeah, I guess the Runic Knight class package would be that you can generate these tokens, and then you can spend them the way you would resources for spells. Spells will have to be covered under domain cards.
Mhm.
So I guess spells that require you to mark stress or mark hit points or things like that would use these tokens instead, unless you wanted to introduce another resource. If you wanted to make MP just a sort of a core part of the game, the same way that your stress track and your HP track are, you could also maybe do that, and that might give you some more design space.
Yeah, that is because I do think part of the fantasy is going to be MP use. Oh,
Yeah.
the the tricky thing is is how that now how that might be calculated. That would be I'd say relatively easy. Um, I think it I think you might open up some interesting opportunities to have physical and magical evasion, for example, or magic armor. I know I think Cloudbreaker does something like that, but Cloudbreaker likes to use resources a lot.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
I will note, Sword Saint most definitely has to be in that secondary category for adepts
yeah, I
because
think so.
first off, if you're picking Sword Saint, it's highly unlikely you're going to be doing um, you're going to be doing any casting. Since the idea is that you passively generate concentration, which gives a gradual bonus, and then you can spend that to do an unsheath effect, which resets concentration to 0, and then you restart the process. It's not far removed from the sword tech in FF6.
Yeah.
I do remember some remarks about how because of the name Sword Saint, it should be similar to Sidolphus in tactics, but that was never in consideration mainly because the way Sidolphus works in tactics, he's just a very, very strong swordsman with all of the knight skills. And just being really, really good at swordsmanship isn't enough of a playstyle with this kind of system.
Yeah, tactics is also like it's ground zero for weird outlier Final Fantasy classes.
Calculator.
Um,
Somebody
calculator.
somebody did ask if I would ever put calculator, and I said, now if you want to homebrew it, oh, go right ahead, be my guest. We encourage homebrew. Am I gonna do it? No, absolutely not. But when it comes to the independent jobs, I feel like a lot of these are going to be secondaries. Astrologian definitely is.
Yeah.
You know, with
Yeah,
the
I think
with
similarly with Chocobo Knight.
I think with Astrologian, it'd be interesting to have a hand of neutral D12s. That whenever you're doing an action roll, you can swap one of those with either the hope or fear dice that you roll.
Yeah. I think there's something already in Daggerheart that does something to that effect, but yeah, that would be a cool gimmick.
Or at least because you're already rolling 5d12 when you're doing Astrologian. You're just expending them on the constellation effects.
Yeah.
Chocobo Knight, honestly, Chocobo Knight would be a primary.
Really?
Because putting aside the mount thing, which I don't put in hard stats for, their main thing is being a combat bully by being really, really good at bull rushes.
Oh, okay.
With Crown's Guard, I feel like that would be a secondary.
Okay.
Is mostly because of their the fact their link abilities and the astral weapon they get. I think Exorcist, despite its effects, would be a primary. Since Exorcist isn't far removed from the asterisk of the same name in Bravely Second, being able to spend MP to undo or redo damage.
Okay. I still have to play Bravely Second. I've gotten most of the way through the first one.
With Guardian, I'd say that's also a primary. You know, they get hit, they generate soul power. They spend soul power to hit back harder.
Yep.
Which Guardian and Paladin do pair well together, but there are plenty of combos we saw like that as we were designing. One of our favorites that we kept in because it was funny was if somebody picks Arcanist and Fencer.
Oh, neat.
You know, Arcanist curses people who hit them. Fencer is all about making themselves the focus.
Yep.
Gunbreaker is definitely a secondary. And is the one exception to the no weapon restriction kind of thing.
Yep.
And the approach I'd probably do is that they can expend instead. The thing about the trigger dice that they have is that it's a alternative to a stable alternative to the extra effort rule. With extra effort, if you roll over your target's defense at a certain amount, you add 1d4 of damage and keep doing it for each multiple of that threshold. The gun arm for Gunbreaker just has a set of extra effort dice that they can just spend on boosting, but they only have a certain amount, and it takes a full action to get to reload. But because they're essentially a burst fighter, I could see them using a resource to step up a damage roll by 1 tier.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Kingsglaive, I think that would be a primary.
Okay.
When it comes to Magitech Knight, that is a secondary, both because of the shield mechanism that it has in particular. Which I could see that being integrated into Daggerheart as a kind of super armor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could work that way. I guess, like, the thing that I found in designing Daggerheart classes is that Daggerheart is a system that really likes to generate and consume resources. So when in doubt, just create a unique type of token that you can generate and then spend for something, and it usually works out.
Yeah. As the way shielding mechanism works is you have 4 shield charges and a shield die. The shield die starts at 1d6. It does go up as you level up. But you don't get additional charges. Whenever you take damage, you can spend a shield charge to reduce the amount of damage.
Yep.
Originally, Magitech Knight was going to be akin to the platforms that you see at the start of FF6, but I couldn't make it work the way I wanted. So instead, I built it around it being a armor master who is basically using power armor.
Yeah. You probably could, just because Daggerheart is much more loose with everything, you probably could build it around those mechs from FF6.
The only reason I'm not going to is because those mechs aren't customizable enough.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's also the issue of they're built for very open areas.
Yes.
Whereas you can do more with power armor.
Yeah. You do run into a potential narrative problem if the party has to go into a dungeon and somebody's going to leave their suit behind.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get that. But see, when it comes to Merchant, Merchant's big thing is just weaponizing the stake system.
Yep.
And I think that can just be them using different tiers of gold as a substitute for other resources. So
that it gets tricky because of how little Daggerheart wants to track gold.
But I'd say Merchant would be a secondary.
Yes, absolutely. And probably an easier conversion if you carry over the stake system and use it to replace Daggerheart's gold system.
Which I probably would. Not because I prefer more granular methods of tracking, but I wanted to make item acquisition as much of a game in the game
Yeah.
as uh, as um as everything else, and also to reflect the fact that depending on the universe, some items might be more, or even parts of a single world, some items might be more expensive than others. If you're in a very forested region, it's probably going to be more expensive to get something metallic or something based around metals.
Yeah.
Uh, Whereas if you need some wood, you're probably going to be paying up more because there's not going to be as much of that going around. But when it comes to Mimic, since Mimic is just a copycat, I think that could easily be handled as a primary. And when it comes to Spirit Master, aka the job that my friend Sig is still salty about because I completely upended one of his boss encounters with it.
Oh, yep.
I'd say that actually, you know what? Mimic is most definitely a secondary. Spirit Master is a primary.
Okay.
So, and there were the, when it comes to the additional jobs that were in Ultimania, I will freely admit that the Keybearer of Dawn was me blatantly ripping off the Hope and Fear die in Daggerheart.
Oh, interesting.
But I'd say Keybearer of Mastery, Keybearer of Dawn, Nightmare, and Somanauts are all independents, and I feel like they'd all be secondaries because of how they work.
Yeah, that feels valid. I would make a recommendation on sort of project scope, which is to sort of build small and scalable. Convert a couple of classes, see how it looks, see how the core mechanics sit, make some changes as needed, and then build the rest. Because it occurred to me while we were going over these that building all of these in Daggerheart and then running into a bug would be awful.
On one hand, yes. On the other hand, I enjoy the jankiness of fan projects.
Completely fair.
Like when it comes to balance, I've taken the approach of if everyone's overpowered, nobody is.
Yes, true.
Now, given that, you mentioned a suggestion of a class package. Based on what we've gone over so far, what would the anatomy of that package be?
Yeah, my thought was that it would be pretty close to the way Daggerheart does its classes, where you have starting evasion, starting hit points, class items, hope feature, class feature. Yeah, I guess if you're cutting out subclasses, you could just make it so that your subclasses are the classes that you take. Yeah, I guess you could streamline Daggerheart's class system to fit with your more modular job system.
So, let's see.
In that case, I think what we'd do is your choice of adept, fighter, mage. That determines your starting evasion and your starting hit points. And then each class you pick gives you one of the following: a hope feature, a class feature, or a subclass.
So let's see. So we're still having it that the classes are warrior, expert, mage, and adept. It sounds like.
Yeah. The thing that I'm recommending is kind of chopping things up a little bit so that your choice of warrior, mage, or adept is a small choice. It gives you your starting evasion and your starting hit points. And then each job you choose is a slightly bigger choice because it gives you class features.
Would it give class features and... Well, we're essentially having that class features are the domain cards. It sounds like. So
I was thinking both, but it would be so much easier to do just the domain cards.
yeah, in that case, I think the 4 classes would each grant a feature. And I think this is one way you could integrate the limit breaks.
Yeah.
I'd say would you, when it comes to hope features, would you say that's on the class or on the jobs?
I would put those on the job because they're very specific. I mean, if you wanted to come up with just 4 sort of generalized hope features and put them on the class, that would be fine.
I think we can do both. Especially since classes and jobs have limit breaks, so a starting character has 4 potential limit breaks.
Yeah, interesting.
It's just the class limit breaks are a little more broad. Like the warrior limit break just has it that the first weapon attack they do each turn doesn't count for their action. It's a once per round thing, but I mean, yes, you could use this to attack twice, but you could do other combinations. Would you have starting evasion be tied to class or job?
I would tie starting evasion and hit point to class.
Yeah.
I think job is going to be just the nitty gritty, just the features.
Yep. So when it comes to spellcast traits, that I think should be tied to class.
Yes, agreed.
But when it comes to the 3 tiers of feature, foundation, specialization, and mastery, should that be tied to jobs?
I would tie those to jobs. It will mean you'll end up writing a lot of features, but I think that's the easiest way to sort of express the unique spirit of each job is through those features.
And when it comes to weapons, obviously there's the different tiers of weapons and their different effects, whereas I have a build a weapon approach that isn't tied to any proficiency or the like.
Yeah, I think you could keep your approach. The tiering system in Daggerheart is a little odd. In that, like, I can't tell whether it wants players to find weapons of new tiers sometimes, and sometimes to be below tier for their level, or whether it wants everyone to just automatically up tier when they hit the next level. In which case, like, there should just be one item list and it should scale.
The reason I took the build a weapon approach I did was so that I wasn't pushing a boulder up a hill like I'm Sisyphus.
Yep. Yeah,
because there's always going to be entries that don't quite fit a traditional weapon list, like say Yuffie's giant shuriken or
Yep.
Renoa's blade launching thing.
Yep. Or the multiple characters that fight by deploying a dog. Yeah, it's good to have an option for weirder and creative weapon builds.
Mm-hmm. So I think the other thing is I was gonna ask if I should include the extra effort rule, but there kind of already is that with how damage works with the 3 tiers of effect.
Yeah.
The only
For something like that, it could be worth playtesting a bit and seeing whether it's needed. Because I think, depending on the type of features that are available, and depending on the types of characters people can build, they might already be able to leverage a lot of resources in the Daggerheart conversion of Legend Edition.
I think that when it comes to the whole, is the approach with extra effort is lighter weapons can do a lot of damage, but they can't do it consistently, and heavier weapons are more stable and have a higher floor, but they have a low ceiling.
Yep.
So I think the better approach would. Just let me look at. So if you do under the first threshold, it's major damage. Between both thresholds, it or minor, then major, then severe. I think a potential approach to it is adding d4s to the total damage, much like with how I actually think you could carry it over relatively easily.
I mean, there is already some scaling in Daggerheart that's built in.
Well, there's already scaling due to things like proficiency.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Proficiency, multiplying your dice.
Because if I were to do it as a baseline, it would end up being like for a light weapon. Every 3 points your attack beats evasion, that would be an extra 1d4 damage, for example.
Okay.
But versus a heavy weapon, that'd be every 5 points that you'd beat evasion. But heavy weapons, the way I have it, light weapons have a d6 in damage. Medium d8, and heavy weapons d10. And
yeah. You could simplify that by just giving light an advantage when rolling against evasion and a lower damage number. It wouldn't quite have the same granularity, but would be relatively simple.
The one thing that I wanted to avoid was having it that no matter how much better someone rolled, that they didn't do the same amount of damage. But no matter how much you roll, you're still only doing 1 to 3 damage.
Yeah, and that is that is a constraint of Daggerheart that can be designed around. You can include abilities or options that let you inflict an additional, force your target to mark an additional hit point or things like that.
Yeah. I think
Um,
a better approach might be, because I know with several of the effects, uh, there is some sort of static modifier. What I'm thinking of instead is replace that static modifier with a trait. Every few points that the trait modifier for damage multiplies.
oh yeah, just sort of uncapping the thresholds.
Hmm.
That way you wouldn't be stuck in a 1 to 3 range. You could have more with high rolls.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that would work.
And because of that, I need to add an additional potential thing, and that is a combat trait.
Uh, as opposed to strength or finesse
Yeah,
or presence.
that the combat trait is what would be used instead of normally strength, finesse, or what have you, depending on your choice of class.
Hang on, let me glance at the attack roll rules to make sure I'm... Okay, yeah. I don't know that you'd need to necessarily... My concern with having, like, an attack skill is that the game often hyper-centralizes around that skill.
I already have something like that with the PCM and MCM.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, as long as you have a range of weapons that can work off of different traits, that potentially solves the problem. That way, it doesn't funnel people into specifically building strength or finesse.
Like the approach that I have is, like, if you pick the warrior class, whenever it calls for your physical combat modifier, that is vigor, and your magical combat modifier is mind.
Yeah.
I already have a dividing line between physical and arcane weapons, and remember, all four of these classes, even warrior, has a spellcast trait.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
and each of the weapons already I just realized each of the weapons already has a trait anyways.
Yes. Yeah, Daggerheart's way of doing this is that the trait is assigned to the weapon, but if you want to have the trait assigned to the class, I'm trying to think through the ramifications of that.
In that case, if it already does that, all that I'd probably have to do is just have it that you assign a trait. You assign a metatype, a template, a trait, and 3
Yep.
tags.
Yeah.
Metatype can be as is. It is basically determining, is this a physical or a magic weapon?
Yeah.
Which, if I'm doing that, should I have a magic version of evasion?
I think that feels like it's very up to your personal preference. My guess is your adaptation of Daggerheart might add some granularity to Daggerheart. Just because like the average of Legend Edition and Daggerheart is going to be a little bit less granular than Legend Edition and a bit more granular than Daggerheart. Um, I wouldn't personally do that unless it became relevant in playtesting, but I do think it's interesting to have enemies that have multiple like types of armor class, so that you can think about how you want to attack them. You might use one type of ability even if you're less good with it because the enemy has a lower armor class for that type of thing.
Yeah. And the way I've done characters with Legend Edition, uh, you're gonna have one defense type that you're better at than the other.
Yep.
You're gonna have one you're really good at, and one that you need other people to help shore that weakness up with.
Yep.
So I do think that is something to do.
This didn't come up, but one other thing that you could probably just take from Daggerheart, but you could also customize to Legend Edition that we haven't covered is communities, which is sort of the third piece of Daggerheart character creation.
Yeah, I don't have a parallel to communities, so with something like that, I would just port it right over wholesale.
Yeah. And the communities in Daggerheart are written to be very general, so I think that would work quite well.
But with template, it is light, medium, or heavy, and melee or ranged. I know Daggerheart has range bands not far removed from something like Savage Worlds.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how necessary it would be to put anything specific on those ranges.
Yeah, I've used them pretty loosely in my own playtesting and they worked fine. If you want to have sort of complex movement in your version, it could be worth putting specific numbers to them. But you said previously that you preferred more of like a turn-based battle system rather than like a 5e style combat
Yeah.
grid.
Pretty much. I was never interested in doing a grid combat system because that would create more questions than it answers.
Yes, it generates a lot of extra design that has to be done around making the grid interesting.
Now, when it comes to things like consumables and magic items, I think with that I can just carry over what I have in Legend Edition wholesale and not have too much issue.
Yeah. For specific mechanical effects, it might take some fiddling, but I would think that would be a relatively easy conversion.
Yeah, I know Daggerheart has 10 levels instead of my 20, but it isn't. But because they're operating on a set of 4, it wouldn't be too difficult to work with. Yeah. And obviously, with some of the advanced rules, the alternate forms of character creation, I'm not even touching. The only real advanced rule that I might touch is item synthesis.
Oh, that would be interesting. And if the item system isn't being changed too much, probably an easy conversion.
Because you could easily have acquiring item synthesis is is a feat, but learning that could just as easily be a downtime activity, or just have the whole range as a downtime activity.
Yeah.
Um, but things like Magicite, Materia, Paramagic, and Sphere Grid would be off the table. Cybernetics I'd be a little more willing to go with.
Yeah. Cybernetics might be easy to sort of reskin as items. I think converting the sphere grid would be nightmarish, but potentially an interesting design challenge.
Um, I feel like because of the wider design that Daggerheart has, things like that would be kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Especially because Magicite, Materia, and Paramagic have their own tree systems that they work on. At most, I could see the charges for a junction, but that would just I don't think that would be the right call. Tactical points and skill chains, that is something that could easily be carried over.
Yep.
Digital Mind Wave can pretty much be carried over as is. Same thing with Warcasting and Elemancy. And I don't need to carry over the NPC creation system that I have because Daggerheart already has one.
Yeah.
So there isn't really a need to carry that over. But I think we covered everything that I planned on, and when it comes to some of this, I will certainly put it in the development pile that I have, and some of it I may stream myself designing. In addition to some of the other campaign concepts that have come up. Like I've done, aside from the MMOs, I have done each of the mainline Final Fantasies as far as how I'd adapt them into the Legend Edition.
Yep.
Oddly enough, the NES entries were the hardest.
Yeah, I can see that. Just them being both more basic and spiritually closer to AD&D. I can see making them tricky.
Oh yeah, and hey there, Shar. Thank you for the raid. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Mildra. I am your one and only gaming monk, and we are discussing adapting some of Daggerheart stuff with some of FF Legends stuff to create a kind of hybrid. I hope Dosa Divas was treating you well, but when it comes to I'm going to call this Daggerheart Legend Edition because why not?
Yep. Let me real quick look at their licensing, because I don't think they have anything forbidding using other IPs in non-commercial material. I don't think they have anything forbidding using their name and trade dress, but I do think they have some caveats on that.
And obviously that kind of name is just a placeholder.
Yeah. Yeah, I think development name, no problem, but don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure.
And Shar, we kind of are. What this is a sort of hybrid between Daggerheart and my system. Oh.
Okay, prohibited content includes trademarks, logos, trade dresses, etc. Basically everything that's not specifically covered under a carve out. Um, like the Daggerheart content logo. Yeah, I think probably you couldn't call it Daggerheart Legend Edition, but you could call it Legend Edition compatible with Daggerheart.
Mhm. Which,
Yeah,
that is something to consider for the
yeah,
future.
yeah, I would recommend that on your own time you go through their CGL and just check through to make sure there aren't any problems. I read through it in full when I was working on my thing, but the thing that I was building was just specifically new material for Daggerheart, so I didn't have to worry about there being another IP involved.
Mhm. And I know some people have tried to wag the finger at me, saying, "Oh, Square's gonna get at you for this," and I'm like, well, for one, there's already a few employees who work at Square who already know about this thing, and as long as I'm not trying to sell it for a profit, they don't care.
That's good. It always feels kind of precarious with fan works and companies just because US copyright is so use it or lose it. It incentivizes bad behavior from companies.
Um,
But if Square is cool with it, that's good.
well, this project was already showcased at Sage,
Oh. Oh,
and
rad. Okay.
no, but and well, a few commenters on the stream got on it. Um, I didn't hear anything after that, and Sage is full on endorsed by even if they aren't actively promoting it, you'll see
Yeah.
comments from like the Sonic YouTube account on it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
if they're happy to have fan works, that's great. I
mhm,
really like the variety of Final Fantasy fan systems that exist. And in general, companies don't usually come down into the RPG indie to try and stop people from making RPGs, but at the same time, I think enough people in the ROM hacking scene and the fan video game scene
mhm.
have witnessed some high profile takedowns. So
So
I get being gun shy.
I do, though. I think when it comes to tabletop, there's just the juice is just not worth the squeeze to go after on that level, and it's
Probably.
gonna be really bad PR.
Yeah, it's bad PR, but I think if I understand the way the law works, which I don't guarantee I do, but my
This is not
understanding
legal
of it
advice.
is, yeah, standard disclaimer. My understanding is companies are encouraged to, I guess, X number of times per year, maybe, uh, go after some sort of fan work or knockoff to show that they're proactively asserting ownership of the copyright. Um, because if companies don't show that they are proactively asserting ownership of the copyright, then a challenge could be made that their copyright is actually more generic.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of things. Don't take my word for it.
Oh yeah. And thank you, John Deere Enjoyer, for the follow. Hope you enjoy the madness that happens here. But this ended up going a bit longer than I had initially thought it might.
Yep.
Once again, we don't do this because it's easy. We do this because we thought it was easy. But there is at least something of a structure here that could potentially be built upon.
Yeah.
And I do wish that there was there was a bit more open of a card creator for Daggerheart. Because the one that currently exists does require me to put it to the existing domains.
Oh, I didn't use the card creator at all. I just put stuff in the layout.
Worst case scenario, I will probably end up using Magic Set Editor for the umpteenth time because that's been my go-to since high school.
Yep. Actually, layout wise, a thing that I ran into trouble with, and the reason why I didn't use like specific cards for my domains, because I wrote them too long. If you know you're going to be putting them in the cards, you have to keep the domains very concise. And that may or may not be a limitation that you want to deal with.
I don't think that's... I keep a lot of effects very concise, so I don't think that's going to be a problem I have.
Okay, I am long-winded, so it was immediately a problem that I had. But if you're definitely sure you can write them concise, yeah, use the cards, it will look good.
Oh. Plus, it'll fulfill my bucket list of making a card-based RPG.
True. Yeah, those are always good.
Especially since I do feel card-based systems are an avenue that still has a lot of untapped potential.
Yeah. And there's a tactility to a card game that isn't quite there with a dice game.
Plus, everybody's got a deck of cards somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
And if not, you can either get them from dirt cheap, or there was a story that somebody took a bunch of random cards he collected in various trash bins and built a full deck.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I could see that being viable.
You might have to worry about the smell, but it is viable.
Yep.
And I have seen people do crazier things, or done crazier things myself. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for putting up with this crazy-ass idea of mine.
Oh, this was cool, and it was fun to be able to chat about design.
It's always nice to do that. And I will be back here tomorrow with a interview with 13th Moon Games covering the updated version of Covenant Crucible. So keep an eye out for that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.